Hi, I want to talk to you today about the Ninth Amendment. And the reason I want to talk to you about the Ninth Amendment today is because it seems that the Ninth Amendment doesn't mean nothing anymore. The federal government wants to make a decision on everything. The federal government wants to tell you what your rights are and what they're not. They want to take rights and turn them into privileges. And I'm curious to find out just how many people or how many citizens are okay with that. And if you're not okay with it, are you not okay with it enough to want to stand up on your own and stop it? Now, the Ninth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is one of the least referred to amendments and decisions of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court very rarely ever uses the Ninth Amendment at all when they make a decision. That's why I say, is it important? Does it mean anything? Is the Ninth Amendment just something that's stuck on paper between 8 and 10, just to hold 8 and 10 apart from each other? It says here, it is also one of the most confusing, controversial, and misunderstood amendments to the Constitution. Actually, it's not. They want you to think that it is. People will tell you that it is, but it's really not confusing. And it's not misunderstood. If you understand it, and if you understand the way it was written. Now, my sister gets angry at me because I read scripture, and I like to read it in context, and I like to read it with feeling. Therefore, it's easier to understand when you understand how and why it was written. Now, it says it's a controversial and misunderstood amendment to the Constitution. This amendment reserves all rights not listed in the Constitution to the people, which means that if it's not written down, the people can make a decision on whether or not it's their right to do something. The Ninth Amendment to the Constitution reads like this. The enumeration in the Constitution, which means listed, the listings of certain rights in the Constitution, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights. If we were to take that and make it in today's lingo, it would be called the enumerations of certain rights in the Constitution. See, they're speaking in the King's English back then. Things were written a little differently than they are now. Today, if it was written today, it would read like this. Certain rights that are numbered within the Constitution shall not be used to deny or put in danger other rights that are retained by the people or that are owned by the people. It says here, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed or denied, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. When it says shall not be construed to deny, which means it shall not, you shouldn't use it to deny. The word construed here means to use. You're not using it to deny, and then it says to disparage, that means to destroy. So, if it was written in today's language, it would say, certain rights that are numbered within the Constitution shall not be used to deny or destroy others retained by the people. That's if it was written today in today's language. But back then, like I said, they used the King's English and they spoke differently. The enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Now, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights. When it says certain rights, it means important rights. Rights that stick out, like your life. There are 4 main things that give you life: water, food, air, and sleep. Those are the 4 main things that give you life. Now, there's other things that give you life too, like getting a checkup, getting your blood drawn to check for diabetes, various things of that nature, exercise and all that. But the 4 main things that give you life is water, food, air, and sleep. Those are the 4 main things that you need to keep your life going. That's not the only thing to keep your life going and to keep yourself healthy and in shape, but those are the 4 things that stick out the most. That's the same thing with the Ninth Amendment. The rights that were written down in the Constitution are not the most important rights. They're not the only rights that you have. They're just the rights that stick out. Now, I'm not using a teleprompter. Of course, I am reading from my phone. I'm reading from a website to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. But I didn't write any of this down. It's just off the top of my head. So if I get a little out of the whack, please bear with me until the end. Okay, now this is the purpose of the Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment's purpose is clear. The Bill of Rights mentions certain rights that are to be protected from government interference. These rights include freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and the right to keep and bear arms, among others. And even the right to bear arms basically has been taken away from us because they want to give you a concealed carry permit, which means that if you don't have a concealed carry permit, you cannot bear an arm. If the Second Amendment is written the way everybody wants it to be understood, all these gun zealots and people that love guns, and I'm not down on you, that I'm just saying, for everybody that loves to have a gun, the Second Amendment basically doesn't exist anymore. Now, just because a right is not mentioned in the Bill of Rights does not mean that the government automatically has the right to interfere with it, which means that, like, your right to free travel using the mode of transportation of the day, they interfere with that and they say it's not a right, it's a privilege. Now, when they say driving is not a right, they're right on that. Now, see, I said right. There's a difference between right and right. Right means a right that you have. Right means that you're right or that's correct. One word right means your rights that you're given. You're able to use something because it's your right. The other right means it's correct. It's true. Okay, now, just because a right is not mentioned isn't okay. Automatically has a right to interfere with. Instead, the Ninth Amendment says that any right not enumerated or listed in the Constitution is still retained by the people, which means that we still own those rights. Those are ours. They cannot be taken away. So in plain language, it means that there are other rights that people have that are not listed in the Constitution. The Founding Fathers realized that they could not possibly list every natural right of human beings that needed protection. Instead, they delegated certain powers to the government that were specifically spelled out in the Constitution, which means that the Constitution says that the government has this power, and that's the only power the government has. and said everything else is left up to the individual and to their state governments. Now, when they said left up to the state governments, that's where it gets a little tricky. And that's a slippery slope, because the individual could view it as a right, but the state could say it's a privilege. Like driving without the right to free travel without a driver's license. The states say it's a privilege. Why? Because they can make money off of it. They want to lump everybody into the driver category, and they want to make everything a motor vehicle. But everything is not a motor vehicle, and the right to free travel is still the right to free travel. The states have figured out a way to force people into getting a driver's license. Now, the catch-22 to that is, once you get a driver's license and you decide to turn yourself into a driver, and you sign on a dotted line, which means that you're agreeing that you're a driver, you're allowing the state to turn your automobile, which is private property, into commercial property or motor vehicle property. So it's no longer private property anymore, because the state has a vested interest in your automobile now. And by signing on a dotted line and getting a driver's license every 4 years in order to be on the open road now, you have to keep that driver's license current, because you have turned yourself into a driver. You have taken yourself out of the traveler position and put yourself into the driver position. So the individuals are supposed to have the rights to decide what is the right and what isn't. But because the federal government said, and to their state government, therefore the states can make a decision on what's a right and what isn't. The origins of the Bill of Rights, that'll be my next topic in my next video. My videos are running kind of long, and I'm trying to cut them down. So, in my second video, it'll be the origins of the Bill of Rights and how they got started. Thank you for tuning in. This has been All Things Considered, because I consider all things.